Fairy tale archetype. That's fairy tale, by the way, not fairy tale. Fairy tale is a completely different archetype. Well, I mean, both are based on classic fairy tales. True. However, where this series differs is how the monsters are based specifically on princesses from those fairy tales, albeit also spliced with some form of animal to give them a more furry form. And the only reason I can think of for the animal splicing is just so Konami could make the pun of fairy tale. The fairy tales debuted in the 2016 pack, The Dark Illusion. This series is made up of only 5 level 4 light spellcaster monsters, with each member sharing identical stats of 1850 attack and 1000 defense. Interestingly, due to these stats, the archetype works incredibly well alongside the Charmer archetype, as they have many support cards that can add or grant benefits to monsters with 1850 attack. And in turn, one of the monsters in this archetype has the ability to add any spellcaster with 1850 attack to the hand, meaning this series and the Charmer archetype symbiotically help each other. But the question then becomes, well, what can these cards do? Well, each one of them possesses a unique effect that is capable of disrupting the opponent in the middle of their plays. These effects are references to the stories that the monsters pay homage to. In fact, it's important to note that all of these monsters are literacy creations that have physically manifested from the pages of different books and scrolls found in a library in the Duel Monster world. We see this revealed in the artwork of the only support card of the series, Fairy Tale Tales. Its effect is you can reveal one spellcaster monster in your hand with 1850 attack and a different name than the monsters you control. The first time each turn you would take battle or effect damage while you control a spellcaster monster with 1850 original attack, you take no damage. While it's not shown in the artwork of this card, all of the monsters of European origin are seen with books in their tails, while the only monster whose tail is from outside of Europe has a scroll in its tail instead. This is done to represent the monster's Japanese roots. Why don't we take a look at these monsters and their origins? First up we have Fairy Tale Snow, known in the Japanese as Fairy Tale Snow White. She is based on the tale of Snow White, and her animal form is that of a squirrel. She is the only member of this series to have a place on the ban list, due to its very annoying effects. And not only that, but it's also the only one to be censored for its international artwork, having its color scheme and clothes altered to actually look less like the person it is referencing. This, of course, is Snow White, specifically the Disney version. Perhaps it was changed to avoid copyright reasons. Her effect is, if she's normal or special summoned, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense. If this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you can banish 7 other cards from your hand, field, or graveyard, special summon this card. If you can't tell, what makes this monster just so broken is a classic case of where's the once per turn on this card. You can continuously keep summoning this monster over and over and over again back to the field, building up a broken board until your opponent probably has no chance of making a comeback. I mean, if you couple that with some cards actually enjoying being banished, and the fact that you can use this monster whenever and during whichever turn, then that's pretty much how you end up with one hell of an annoying monster. As we were saying a little bit earlier, Snow is based on Snow White, a German fairy tale of origin that, like all other fairy tales we talk about today, was adapted into the well-known Grimm's fairy tale series. In Snow White, the tale is about Snow White, a princess whose new stepmother was a witch. The witch, obsessed with beauty, would ask her enchanted mirror whom was the fairest of them all. However, when one day the mirror answered, Snow White, well, the witch didn't take kindly to that news, and so ordered a huntsman to kill Snow White. Luckily, the man couldn't bring himself to do it. However, he did end up abandoning her in the woods. Lost and afraid, the girl stumbled upon a house where 7 dwarves lived. They agree to let her live with them, and they make this her home. However, When the witch hears that she's still alive, she disguises herself as an old woman and offers her a poisoned apple. Snow White takes the apple, starts to eat it, and then it lodges itself in her throat, and the poison causes her to fall into an eternal slumber. Fast forward 24 hours, and a prince just so happens to ride past and see the unconscious Snow White. He and his men carry her back to the castle in hopes of helping her when they return. However, on the return journey, one of the men fumbles the coffin that Snow White is in, and as this happens, the piece of poisoned apple flies out of her mouth. Thanks to this, Snow White awakens. She looks at the prince, he looks at her, and the two fall madly in love. And from that, they get married and live happily ever after. Based on this story, we can see that this monster's effect of banishing 7 cards is a reference to the 7 dwarfs. And its second effect, to flip a monster face down, is a reference to the poisoned apple. Essentially, Fairy Tale Snow is shifting a monster into a slumbering form. Next up, we have Fairy Tale Sleeper, known in the Japanese as Fairy Tale Thalia. Sleeper is based on the tale of Sleeping Beauty. Her animal is that of a cat. The reason for her Japanese name of Thalia is because in the original rendition of this tale, Sleeping Beauty's name was actually Thalia. Fairy Tale Sleeper's effect is Flip Effect. You can special summon one monster from your hand. When your opponent activates a normal spell or trap card, Quick Effect, you contribute one other monster. The activated effect becomes change one face-up monster your opponent controls to face-down defense. The tale of Sleeping Beauty is about a young princess named Aurora. Basically, the king and queen are holding a party for her birth. They invite absolutely everyone to this party. However, one invitation gets lost in the mail, and that was to a fairy named Maleficent. Maleficent, hearing of this party and slighted by the fact she's not invited, decides to crash it and place a curse on the young princess, stating on her 16th birthday, Aurora will prick her finger on a spindle and die. Luckily, there's some other fairies present at this party, and they use their powers to slightly alter the curse, changing death to sleep for 100 years and having the clause that the curse can be broken by true love's kiss. On Aurora's 16th birthday, she is lured by a Maleficent in disguise to a room with a lone spindle. And of course, she pricks her finger and falls into a 100-year slumber. Absolutely insanely, the good fairies have the genius idea to put everybody else in the kingdom into a 100-year slumber, so that when the sleeping princess wakes, she will still have all her family and subjects still alive. And I'm not done. The good fairies also caused the forest surrounding the castle to overgrow. This was done so that no one could disturb Aurora. At this point, I'm confused. These are supposed to be the good fairies, right? Regardless, 100 years later, a handsome prince finds the castle. He climbs to the tallest tower, sees the sleeping princess not having aged a day, falls instantly in love with her, gives her true love's kiss, and she wakes up. And with that, Aurora and the prince live happily ever after. Based on this tale, we can see that Sleeper's effect turn an opponent's effect into flipping one of these monsters face down is a reference to the eternal sleep that Sleeping Beauty was placed in. And in fact, the actual flip effect of this monster, which allows it to special summon a monster when it's flipped up, could be a reference to Sleeping Beauty's awakening. When she opens her eyes, she is met by her Prince Charming. Fairy Tale Luna, known in the Japanese as Fairy Tale Kaguya. Luna is based on the tale of Princess Kaguya, also known as the tale of the bamboo cutter. Her animal is that of a fox. Fairy Tale Luna's effect is, when it's normal summoned, you can add one spellcaster monster with 1850 attack from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send one card with that monster's name from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard to negate this effect, otherwise return both to the hand. The tale this monster is based on is about an old bamboo cutter who finds a baby girl inside a bamboo tree. Having no children of his own, the old man adopts the girl with his wife. They name the girl Kaguya Hime. Kaguya is revealed, spoilers, to be from the moon. As Kaguya grows older, many princes try to win her hand in marriage. Kaguya turns them all down by setting them impossible tasks to complete. Eventually, the Emperor meets Kaguya, and asks for her hand, despite also being rejected. This time, Kaguya doesn't set an impossible task. She simply states that the two can't be together, for she is an immortal being and will soon have to leave this world. Following this, Kaguya would begin to grow sad and would stare with tear-filled eyes at the moon. She longed for her home, and one day a celestial entourage would arrive and would take Kaguya back. Before departing, she would write a goodbye letter to the Emperor, attaching with it an elixir for immortality. The Emperor, after reading the letter, would write his own and ask for it to be taken, along with the elixir, to the highest mountain in all of Japan. There, he wished for the items to be burned. By doing this act, he hoped his message would reach the princess, which was that he did not wish to live forever in a world without her. Based on this tale, we can see Luna's effect is a reference to how she would give impossible tasks to princes so that she could avoid their hand in marriage. In this case, Luna demands the task of sending a duplicate card of itself to the grave if the opponent wants to keep their monster on the field alongside Luna. If they fail to do this, both will return to the hand. Back to the moon, perhaps? Fairy Tale Rella, known in the Japanese as Fairy Tale Cinderella. Rella is based on the tale of Cinderella. Her animal is that of a dog. Its effect is neither player can target monsters on the field with spell cards or effects, except this one. Once per turn, you can discard one spell, equip one equipped spell from your hand, deck, or graveyard to this card, but return that equipped spell to the hand during the end phase. The tale that this monster is based on is about Cinderella, a girl who is put to work by an abusive stepmother and stepsisters. One day, out of the blue, the king holds a ball. The stepmother and the stepsister go, leaving Cinderella locked up at home. Cinderella makes the wish that she could go to the ball too, and thanks to the help of her fairy godmother, her wish is granted. The one catch of this spell being that it will only last until midnight. At the ball, the prince sees Cinderella and the two begin to dance, and of course, immediately fall in love with each other. However, at that moment, the clock begins to strike midnight. As she begins to run, she loses one of her glass slippers. The next day, the prince sends a bunch of his men to every house in the kingdom, determined to find the owner of the slipper. Eventually, he would find Cinderella and place the slipper onto her foot, confirming a perfect fit. After this, Cinderella would escape her evil stepmother and stepsisters, the two would get married, and they'd live happily ever after as well. Based on this tale, we see that this card's effect of discarding a spell is a reference to losing her glass slipper. However, it would come back, as this monster lets you add back an equipped spell, whereas in the story, the slipper just comes back to her. Note as well that this effect makes a reference to midnight by the fact that it ends at the end of the turn. And as well, the fact that neither player can target monsters on the field with spell effects apart from this one might be a reference to the suffering Cinderella faced, being burdened with all the bad tasks that the others didn't want to do. Finally, we have Fairy Tale Rchka, known in the Japanese as Fairy Tale Rchka. Rchka is based on the tale of the Snow Maiden. Her animal is that of a weasel. Its effect is when this card is normal summoned, you can make your opponent gain 500 life points. Then your opponent looks at the top 3 cards in your deck and then chooses one of them for you to add to your hand. Also, shuffle the rest back into the deck. Once per battle, if this card battles before damage calculation, you can send this card to the graveyard. This monster's tale is about the Snow Maiden, a story of Russian origin. Many years ago, on the outskirts of a village, there lived the Snow Maiden. She lived alongside her father Frost and her mother Spring. Envious of the mortals in the village nearby, she wished to her parents that she could go down and experience the longings and passions that humans displayed. Once in the village, she became entangled in a love square. However, sadly, as her heart was made of ice, she was incapable of falling in love. She asked her mother Spring to help her feel the same things that the humans could as well, no matter what the cost. Her wish yet again would be granted, and upon returning to the village, the Snow Maiden would finally fall in love and feel true happiness for the first time. However, sadly, immediately on falling in love, Frost's winter spell was broken. A single ray of sunlight shone on the Snow Maiden, and as she did, she began to melt away. Based on this story, we can see that this monster's effect that sends itself to the grave after it battles is a reference to the Snow Maiden finally falling in love, only to melt away, and in this case, to be sent to the grave immediately. And Fairy Tale Rchka doesn't even get to conduct damage in this battle, meaning it is sent to the grave before it can truly feel its feelings, if you will. Guys, that was the Fairy Tale archetype done. If you could add another fairy tale monster to this series, what would it be? What would its effect be? And what would its lore be? Let me know in the comment section below, but other than that, thank you for watching. Catch you later.